Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Now, it's going to be a shorter episode. We're just going to quickly fly through Al-Fatiha, which is the first surah. I actually forgot at the beginning of the video, but nonetheless, every single word I'm about to say to you now is true and accurate of the words of Allah in this book. Also, this one here, which is usually what we do, translate and read the Arabic Quran, because it's not the same. But Al-Fatiha is the same. There's no dispute between the two in that. So that's what we're going to cover now. So let's get started. So as you can see, Al-Fatiha, that's it there, the right hand page, is a very short surah, and that's actually why I didn't bother with it to begin with. Most of what is here is covered in more depth in the following surah, which is Al-Baqarah, which we did cover in varying levels of detail. We went through every single verse, every single word. But of course, Muslims, being what they are, have complained and said, I am not giving it the respect it deserves. So that's why we're going to go back, now that we finish Al-Imran, and we're going to go through the meaning of Al-Fatiha. So we start with verse 1. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. So I think what Allah is trying to tell us here is that he is the most gracious and the most merciful. And I think now that we've gone through Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran, we know this not to be the case, as what he considers to be grace isn't what we consider to be grace. For us, grace is kindness, is forgiving, is, nice things, nice qualities. For instance, Jesus Christ, when he offers grace, it's something which makes you feel worthy and good, and it encourages you to behave well. But the grace of Allah encourages his Muslims to wage war with the rest of the human species, without question. In fact, it is such a strong command from Allah that they follow his grace and his grace alone. He makes them criminals if they don't. For instance, any Muslim who denies the Sharia, thou shalt kill all non-believers, will burn in his evil fire forever. Regardless of if they do everything else he commands them of, if they don't take the holy jihad up as their cause and devote their life to the war and killing of non-believers, in his grace Allah will damn them to hell and torture them in the grave. That's what this means. And saying he is the most merciful, well, we know from the end of Al-Baqarah. Mercy for Allah is cutting the heads off the non-believers, giving them a quick death, rather than enslaving them and torturing them, and then killing them later on. So we find that Allah, his grace and his mercy, although he claims prominence, the most graceful, the most merciful, he wants to be more graceful and merciful than others, we know from his own writings, in the Quran of the Muslims, that this is not the case, and it is actually the opposite of that. That's what this means. 2. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of worlds. So what could he mean here? Well, he is saying to you, all praise is to Allah. And this is the root of why in Arabic countries it's apostasy. It's against the law to worship the name of any other God or Jesus Christ directly. And that is in fact why they demote Jesus Christ to a regular human prophet, and they are not to speak of his crucifixion. In the Quran, Allah claims to swap him out for a dud, and the dud is crucified. And the reason he does that is to make Muslims think that Christ never rose from the dead and was not born of a virgin birth. He was just another guy, another prophet. He was below Muhammad, in fact. So that's why all praise be to Allah is important for Allah to say right at the beginning of his book. And when he calls himself the cherisher and the sustainer of worlds, plural, what he is saying there is that he is the sustainer of the heavens and the earth, the two worlds of heaven and earth. Although in Christian theology there's no separation, the world is one. As in the heavens is above the earth, but it's the same physical space. In Allah's words, it's two different worlds, because paradise has yet to be created. Even though at the beginning of the Adam story in this very book, the start of this book is in Eden, and then they are kicked out, and Satan leads Allah and his angels and Adam and Eve down to earth. When he describes his garden paradise, he describes how it's going to be created from the blood and the bones of all the dead non-believers. So therefore, for that place to be created, his end times genocidal prophecy at first will need to be completed. And that's why he says here, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, with a plurality, because he is going to create this new place once he has wiped out God's flock, God's children, if he ever manages it, which I severely doubt. That's what this means. 3. Most gracious, most merciful. So this is a repeat of verse 1. He's saying Allah is most gracious, most merciful, and I don't think we need to beat around the bush to say, as we did in verse 1, Allah's grace is false grace. Allah's mercy is false mercy. And it just shows you, doesn't it? It just proves even further that Allah has no real understanding of these concepts. Grace, mercy, or justice. He just has no idea how those things work. The only reason he knows of them at all is from his reading of previous scriptures, the Gospels and the Torah. And in his jealousy, he has tried to steal the authority from those books and put it into his own. And in my view, totally failed. That's what this means. 4. Master of the Day of Judgment. As we know, Muslims believe that there will be a final day, the Day of Judgment, before Earth is destroyed, and only the new created paradise exists. And that's what he's talking about here. He's saying all Muslims must believe in the Day of Judgment, and that Allah is the master of the Day of Judgment. So what that means is, after every Jew, Christian, atheist, pagan, non-believer of any kind, after we are all destroyed and killed, and from our blood and bones the paradise is created, then all the Muslims can come out of Islamic purgatory along with Muhammad, and they can flood into the paradise that he creates deep below the earth, and the rest of it can be discarded, destroyed. That's what he's talking about here, and Allah will be the master of that happening. So I don't think any other faith believes this. It's only specifically Islam that believes that to be the case. And we move on. Number 5. Thee do we worship, and thine's aid we seek. So it's more repeats of the same. 2 out of the 5 verses that we have spoken of are Allah telling you that you have to worship him, and that he is the cherisher and sustainer of the world. So what that means is everything in the world that keeps the world turning, the food that nourishes you, is all a gift from Allah. It's his bounty. And that's why he's saying this in verse 5. He's saying, thine aid we seek, as in, for us to be alive, we need to seek Allah's aid. We're not going to live without Allah. That's what this is saying. Despite the fact that this all happened before Allah was a thing. And in his own words, he says, he came upon Adam and the Garden of Eden, which was already created. So we know from his own writings in Al-Baqarah, actually, we don't seek his worship, and he will not aid us. It was already done by another, who is God. And we move on to the final line of Al-Fatiha, number 7. The way on those whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, whose portion is not wrath, and who have not gone astray. Now, it's very important that we recognise what he's done here. The last verse of Al-Fatiha, rather than being a prayer or a worship of Allah, is a subtle threat to the non-believers, and this tells us what the rest of this book will be. He starts off by saying, the way on those whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, i.e. these guys over here get my grace, the Muslims. And then he finishes off by saying, not those whose portion is wrath, and who go astray. So he's saying, these guys over here, Muslims, they're my grace. These guys over here who don't get my grace, their portion is wrath. So the only thing they're going to get rewarded by Allah is wrath, no matter what they do. And they have gone astray. And as we know, later in the book, he's going to command his Muslims to kill those people. So whereas the final word in God's book, when he is going through his 10 commandments, is thou shalt keep all my commandments in the spirit of love, for love is the whole of the law. God is expressly demanding and instructing us that where we keep his other commandments, which we must keep if we are to walk in his path, we must do this in the spirit of love. We are not to go around killing and murdering people or bullying or stealing from people so that we can give it back to God. He doesn't want stolen loot. He doesn't want stolen praise. He doesn't want enforced worship. Allah does want enforced worship. Not only does he want enforced worship, you, O Muslims, are going to be the guys to enforce it for him. And so we can recognize in verse 7 of Al-Fatiha, Allah's true will is authority by the sword. Unlike the sword of Christ, he means an actual human-built metal sword. And that is the summary of Al-Fatiha, and further proofs that we can know Allah is no merciful God, and is in fact a jealous, spiteful creature who means harm on us as humans. And that's the end of this video. So I hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I will see you in the next one. Bye now. And so that brings Without Lies Islam Dies to a close for 2 or 3 days. We're going to have a short recess, do some Christian stuff, and then we're going to get back to the Quran of the Muslims in due course. So enjoy that. God bless you all. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. Bye 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 bye.